Carolyn? Introduce Carolyn Dykema.
Hello, everyone. I know this is the place to be, and I'll tell you why. In knocking on doors here in Southborough over the last several months, I can tell you how many times people have asked me, so are you going to be at the senior center? So the answer is yes, and I'm so glad to be here. Just wanted to say thanks to the senior center folks for arranging this great opportunity. As was mentioned, I'm running for the 8th Middlesex seat, which is precincts 2 and 3 here in Southborough. I am a Democrat, and certainly appreciate your support in the Democratic primary of 16. And the question is always sort of what brings you to this point. And my background is very local. I am from Holliston, and have been there for a number of years. My husband, Bill, and I moved out here to this area. First married, living in Watertown. And we were planning a family. We had a lot of big dreams. And chose this area because of all it had to offer us as a young couple who were planning a family. It had wonderful schools. It had the kind of charm and historic character that I was used to, having grown up here in New England. And it was near my parents, which frankly, looking forward to raising a family, it was very important to me to have the next generation be there to help me raise the kids. And so here we are, and we've loved it. We've got 3 children, and we have every intention of staying here for a good long time. I have had the real privilege and opportunity to work in a number of positions at the local level, including some work on wastewater projects and some planning issues with Vera Goliath's been involved in Metro West Growth Management Organization, dealing with regional planning issues and specifically some issues in Southborough. Very familiar on the planning side with what you folks are dealing with here, with traffic issues on Route 9, with development and managing development and the environmental concerns that allow us to preserve the character of our communities that is really so important to us here. So with that background, also I have a business background. So that's where I come from. I have an MBA. I worked for a number of years in the private sector, so I also have an understanding of how important it is, number 1, to set goals, number 2, to be realistic and ready to work hard to achieve those goals, and number 3, to be also realistic about what it's going to cost to achieve those goals, and to live within a budget is something I've always had to do in the private sector. And it's something also I think is important to do in the public sector. What do we need to do? And it comes to setting goals, and some of the things that I've been talking about, again, we're to preserve the character that we have here in our towns, which is so important. I've been focusing on 3 things, and I don't think they're unique to any group of people. I think they're truly a shared community set of standards that we should look to. Number 1, education. I think education on the parents, obviously, with kids in the public schools, it's important to preserve the quality of those schools. But as I talk to people, education isn't a parent's issue, it's a grandparent's issue, it's a business issue, providing high-quality education that will set the stage for the next generation of workers in business to help us prosper. My second E is the economy. Clearly everyone in this room, and anyone who lives in this area, understands the financial challenges that we face. The issue with controlling property taxes and still maintaining the level of service that we all expect, maintaining the quality of our roadways, maintaining the quality of our schools, being able to appropriately plan for the future and maintain our local staff to be able to do that. We have great opportunity here in our district, which is something that I look to. I was recently at a forum at the 495 Partnership, and one of the things that really struck me was they said, here in Metro West area, we have one of the most highly skilled workforces in the state right now, which to me says opportunity. How can we, at the state level, working in close conjunction with our local leaders, set an environment and work together to attract and retain some of these new businesses? I know some of them have brought up earlier, biotech, renewable energy. These are the industries that are growing these days. How do we best take advantage of that? And I think a number of things that, again, have come up today. Transportation is an enormous issue. How are we going to provide regularly scheduled transportation? The Framingham line here in Southborough is one perfect example. Businesses are saying we need to be able to transport workers, allow workers to get to work out here in Metro West where we're providing a job. Can we get better train schedules? Absolutely. Why can't we do that? We need to be able to do that. Infrastructure planning has come up as one of the things that we need to pursue. How can we do that? We need to work together to put in the infrastructure to make sure that our Route 9 is able to handle the traffic that we're getting now and be able to plan ahead so that we're not in reactive mode, but we're actually out ahead of it and controlling our destiny, so to speak, from an economic perspective. And one thing that hasn't come up much here today yet, which is interesting to me, is the environmental issue. I have a background on the planning board in Holliston. I did that for 5 years. And what we saw a lot of was new business coming in, new development. And one of the biggest challenges today, with the growth that we've seen in this area and in Southborough, I'm sure most of you have seen tremendous growth in the last 20 years, is how do we manage that growth in a responsible way that's also responsible to the environment and that maintains our open space, our agricultural history and character that I think so many of us value about our towns. And how can we do that in a way that makes sense? One of the things I remember hearing way back when was that water is not a sexy issue at the State House. And the person who was speaking was obviously an advocate of really protecting our water resources. To me, water absolutely in our environmental protection should be a sexy issue at the State House, or at least should be a very high priority. We need to be thinking ahead. As a parent, I'm always thinking ahead as to the next generation. I'm sure many of you are in the same situation with children and grandchildren. We need to be proactive on some of these water management issues. We can't wait until we have problems before we start really addressing contaminants getting into our water, making sure that our wastewater systems are well maintained and appropriately managed. These are all issues that I will focus on at the State House. Again, to me, it's the 3 E's. This is the path to our future. And strong education, environmental protection, and economic development. Again, we'll up our sleeves. Let's get it done and let's actually see some results. And I would certainly appreciate your support in the Democratic primary on the 16th. Thank you very much.